As they lowered my only son into the ground, my daughter-in-law leaned in, touched my shoulder gently, and whispered something I'll never forget. "You have a week to get out." At first, I thought I misheard her. Surely no one could say something like that at a funeral. Not here, not now, not to a grieving mother. But she looked right at me. Her eyes were cold. She meant every word. I didn't cry, not then. I didn't scream, or faint, or slap her the way some women might. I just stood there, frozen, staring at the casket as if Jacob might sit up and say, "Mom, it's okay, I've got this." But he didn't, because Jacob was gone. My only son, the only reason I still held on to this world after losing my husband 12 years ago. Gone at 42, from a heart attack so sudden, it felt like a cruel prank played by the universe. And now, his widow, Kelsey, was standing beside me, whispering threats while people were still laying flowers and hugging me through their tears. A week, 7 days, that's what she gave me. To pack up 40 years of memories, to leave the only home I've ever known, to disappear so she could, what? List it for sale? Remodel it? Rent it out? That house wasn't just wood and brick. It was the first place Jacob ever walked. The porch where my husband proposed. The kitchen where I learned to cook by trial and error, usually ending in laughter and burnt toast. And now, while my hands were trembling with grief, she thought it was the perfect moment to strike. She didn't even say it with anger. It was calm, practiced, as if she'd been waiting for this day, as if she had timed it perfectly. When I was at my lowest, my quietest, my most heartbroken, she pounced. I stayed silent, but in that silence, something shifted inside me. Something strong. I may be 72, I may be a grieving mother, but I am not weak. And I have never, ever walked away from a fight that mattered. She gave me a week to get out, but what she didn't know was that I still had the deed and the strength to use it. I was born in this house. Well, almost. I was actually born down the road in my grandmother's bedroom. But this house, this white farmhouse with its red door and creaky porch swing, has always been my home. My parents built it with their own hands. I inherited it after they passed. And my husband, Daniel, poured his heart into every inch of it, every nail, every beam, every patch of soil in the garden. Daniel and I were married for 36 years before cancer took him from me. Quietly, dignified, just like he lived. After he passed, I didn't think I'd ever know joy again. But then there was Jacob, my son, my anchor. Jacob was the kind of boy who never needed reminders. He always showed up. For birthdays, for Sunday dinner, for no reason at all. He had Daniel's gentleness, my sense of humor, and this warmth that just made people trust him. He grew up in this house, learned to ride a bike in our gravel driveway, graduated with honors from Chapel Hill. He became a high school English teacher, the kind kids remembered long after they left his classroom. He married Kelsey about 7 years ago. I'll be honest, I tried to like her. I really did. Kelsey was polite, at least in public. She was stylish, always perfectly put together, always on her phone, always somewhere else. I knew from the beginning that I wasn't her kind of person. She liked cocktail hours and networking events. I liked gardening and crossword puzzles. But Jacob loved her. That was enough for me. Or it used to be. When Jacob and Kelsey got married, he gently suggested something that seemed innocent at the time. He said, "Mom, I just want to make things easier in the future. Let's put your name and mine on the deed, jointly. If anything ever happens, it'll avoid probate." I didn't ask too many questions. I trusted him. He was my son. He said it was for protection, for me. And for all those years afterward, there was peace. I stayed in the house. Kelsey and Jacob lived in a condo across town. She never wanted to live here. Too old-fashioned, she once said. But Jacob came over often, fixing leaky pipes, bringing groceries, sometimes just to sit with me under the oak tree and talk about books. That oak tree in the backyard? Daniel planted it the day Jacob was born. It's taller than our roof now. I used to joke that it grew faster than Jacob did. We were happy, as much as one can be after loss, until the phone rang one Tuesday morning. Jacob had collapsed in the teacher's lounge, gone before the ambulance arrived. No goodbye, no warning, no time. And just like that, I was alone again. Or so I thought. What I didn't realize then, what I was about to learn in the most cruel and calculating way, was that Kelsey had been waiting, watching. And when she saw her chance, she didn't just take it. She tried to take everything. The funeral was held on a warm Saturday in April. The sun was shining in that unfair way it does when the world feels like it should be dark. People came from everywhere. Former students, co-workers, old neighbors, even the principal. They all said the same thing. He was too young. He had so much more to give. He changed my child's life. I nodded, smiled politely, accepted casseroles I knew I wouldn't eat, but inside, I was somewhere else. I kept looking at the casket and thinking, he's in there. My Jacob is in there. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stood as still as I could. For him, as we said our final goodbyes, people gathered in small groups at the cemetery, comforting one another. Some cried openly. Others stood in stunned silence. I was standing near the head of the casket, my hand resting gently on the wood, when I felt someone step close behind me. It was Kelsey. I turned, expecting a kind word, maybe even a tear. Instead, she leaned in, so close her perfume overwhelmed the scent of fresh flowers, and whispered, cold as steel, "You have a week to get out." I stared at her. I thought surely I misunderstood, but her expression was unreadable. Her lips curled into a soft, fake smile, the kind she wore for holiday photos and client meetings. Then she turned, smoothed the front of her black dress, and walked away as if nothing had happened. I was paralyzed. I couldn't speak. My ears rang. The ground felt unstable beneath me. I stood there for what must have been 10 minutes, alone, while other mourners offered their final words to Jacob. Nobody noticed. Nobody could have imagined what she had just done. It wasn't just what she said. It was when she said it. It was how she said it. No compassion, no hesitation, just a cold, calculated eviction notice at her husband's graveside. That moment will stay with me forever. Not because it was the cruelest thing I'd ever experienced, though it was, but because it was the exact second I realized I was not just grieving, I was under attack. Later that afternoon, at the reception back at the church, she made herself the center of attention. She hugged people, laughed softly, told stories about Jacob that made it sound like they were closer than they ever truly were. I stayed quiet. Someone asked me where I'd be going next, if I'd stay with a friend or move to a retirement community. I blinked. "Excuse me?" I asked. The woman said, "Kelsey mentioned you were moving out soon. Selling the house?" I smiled weakly. "Oh, is that so?" I didn't argue. I didn't confront. Not yet. I realized then, she wasn't just whispering at funerals. She was already laying the groundwork, telling people I was leaving, making it sound like it was mutual, as if this were my idea. She was staging my exit as smoothly as she would stage one of her listings. But she made one mistake. She thought I was just an old woman in grief. What she forgot was that I was also a mother, a widow, a woman who had been through hell and rebuilt herself before, and I wasn't about to be pushed out of my home. Not by her. That night, I didn't sleep. The house was too quiet. You'd think after 12 years of widowhood, I'd be used to the silence. But that night was different. It was hollow. The kind of silence that presses in on you, like the walls themselves are grieving. I made a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table in the same chair I'd sat in 1,000 times. Morning chats with Jacob, late-night talks with Daniel, crossword puzzles by the window. But this time, I just sat there, holding the cup, watching the steam disappear. I looked around the room and saw 1,000 ghosts. Jacob's baby drawings still taped inside the pantry door. Daniel's chipped coffee mug still resting on the top shelf. A photo of the three of us on the porch, smiles frozen in time. And that's when it hit me. Not just the grief of losing Jacob, but the sheer audacity of what Kelsey had done. She didn't just try to take a house. She tried to erase me, erase my place in Jacob's life, in this life, as if I was a placeholder, something temporary she could sweep out the door with a deadline and a moving van. I opened the hallway closet and pulled down an old cardboard box, Jacob's memory box. Every birthday card he ever made for me was in there. Crayon drawings, scribbled notes, a letter he wrote at 16 that said, "If anything ever happens to me, Mom, I want you to keep everything. You deserve everything." I hadn't read that letter in years. I don't think he even remembered writing it, but I kept it. I always kept everything that mattered. I held it in my lap and cried. Not loud sobs, just silent tears running down my face while I stared at the paper. That night, I sat on the floor in his childhood bedroom, the same room where I used to rock him to sleep when he had nightmares, the same room where I cried the night Daniel died, because Jacob was the only reason I had left to stay strong. Now, both of them were gone, and Kelsey had the nerve to treat me like an inconvenience, a squatter in my own home. She didn't cry at the funeral. She didn't sit with me. She didn't even bring Jacob's favorite book to be buried with him, The Old Man in the Sea. He loved that story. Always said it reminded him of his dad. But I did. I slipped it into the casket myself when no one was looking, because I knew him. She only ever knew the version of him that fit her life. And somewhere between the silence and the memories, a fire lit in me that I hadn't felt in years. Not rage, not vengeance, resolve. This wasn't just about property. It was about dignity, about legacy, about not being pushed aside like a piece of outdated furniture. She gave me a week to leave, but I decided I wasn't going anywhere. Not until I was sure she couldn't take one more thing that didn't belong to her. The next morning, I woke up with something I hadn't felt in days. Clarity. It came softly, like sunlight through curtains. I wasn't frantic or angry anymore. I didn't feel like a victim. I just felt awake. I made a list on a notepad, the kind I always kept by the phone. Utilities, attorney, property documents. I underlined that last one twice. I needed to understand what I was up against. Kelsey spoke with such certainty, like she had a right to take the house. But what did the deed actually say? I went to the hallway closet and pulled out a fireproof metal lockbox I hadn't opened in years. The combination was still the same. Jacob's birthday. Inside was a carefully organized stack of folders, labeled in Daniel's handwriting. Will, deed, marriage certificate, medical, savings. I opened the folder labeled deed, and there it was, yellowed slightly with age, but crisp and legible. The top of the page read, Joint tenancy with right of survivorship owners, Evelyn Grace Thomas and Jacob Daniel Thomas. I read it once, then again, and then I froze. That phrase, right of survivorship, sounded familiar. I remember Jacob using it the day we signed the paperwork. If anything ever happens to me, it'll all be yours automatically, Mom. I never thought I'd need to test those words. But now I read every line, like my life depended on it. I pulled out my old reading glasses, my hands trembling, and Googled the legal term on my phone. In a joint tenancy, with right of survivorship, if one owner dies, their share automatically transfers to the surviving owner, bypassing probate. My heart pounded, not in fear, but in realization. Jacob had protected me, even after death. He had given me everything. Kelsey wasn't on the deed, not anywhere, not even in fine print. She had no legal right to the house, none. She'd walked into the funeral, smug and calculating, thinking she had the upper hand, thinking I would fold, that I was too old, too alone, too heartbroken to fight. But now I held the truth in my hands, and the truth was power. I sat down at the kitchen table and spread out the documents, smoothing the pages with care. I pulled out my planner and wrote one word in red ink: lawyer. I called Mr. Eldridge, Daniel's old friend and the family's attorney for decades. He picked up after 2 rings. "Evelyn," he said gently, "I'm so sorry about Jacob. He was a good man." "He was," I replied quietly. "And he was smart. I need to talk to you about the house." I brought the papers to his office the next day. He read them carefully, adjusted his glasses, and nodded. "You're the sole owner now, Evelyn. She can't sell it. She can't claim it. She can't touch it." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. All these years, I thought I had signed that document for Jacob's protection. Turns out, he had signed it for mine. And now that I had proof, I wasn't just going to stay in my home. I was going to protect it, quietly, completely, and without ever letting her know what I held in my hands. Until it was too late. I didn't rush. I didn't confront. I didn't text Kelsey a single word. I just got quiet and got ready. Mr. Eldridge walked me through everything. "All we need to do is record an affidavit of survivorship and file a notice of interest at the county office," he said. "Once that's done, it's legally clear. You own the property outright." So, I gave him the green light. He filed the paperwork that same week. No headlines, no warnings. Just quiet, clean legal action. Done with the same kind of dignity Jacob always showed. Kelsey had no idea. She thought she had planted a seed of fear inside me. What she didn't realize is that I'd taken that fear and turned it into a fortress. I updated the locks on the house, changed every password associated with the property, utilities, insurance, online banking. I removed Jacob's name from joint accounts and ensured my affairs were protected. I even installed a new security camera at the front door. Discreet, but visible. Then I waited. She texted me midweek. "Hey Evelyn, I've got a stager coming by Friday at noon to take a look at the house. Please have things ready." She didn't ask. She didn't explain. Just gave an order, like I was her tenant. I replied, "That's fine. I'll be here." And I smiled to myself when I hit send. I let her believe I was cooperating. Let her believe she was in control. She didn't know I'd already spoken to her own brokerage's managing director. I'd sent him a copy of the deed and told him, in writing, that any listing attempt would be considered fraudulent and reported to the State Real Estate Commission. He apologized, said he'd speak to her immediately. The stager never showed up, but Kelsey did. She pulled up to the house Friday afternoon in her sleek, black Lexus, walked up the porch steps in heels too high for country gravel. Clip-clop, like she owned the place. She stepped inside and looked around, like she was measuring the walls. "Did the stager call you?" she asked casually, like we were planning brunch. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "He canceled." She frowned. "Why?" I smiled. But I didn't answer. Let her stew. Let her wonder. Because I wasn't just planning to stop her. I was planning to end this. Once and for all. That weekend, I gathered every photograph, every document, and made digital copies. I created a folder on my laptop called Grace House Protection. I gave a copy to Mr. Eldridge, another to the safe deposit box at the bank. I even left a flash drive with a trusted friend at church, labeled open if anything happens to me. Paranoia, number preparation. I wasn't going to be blindsided again. And above all, I wasn't going to lose my home. The place where my life had happened, where my son was raised, and where my husband's memory lived in every floorboard. I was playing the long game now. Kelsey had started a battle she never truly understood. And I was ready to end it with the one thing she never expected: silence. It happened on the 7th day, exactly 1 week after Jacob's funeral. The day Kelsey gave me as a deadline. She pulled into the driveway like she owned it. Window down, sunglasses on, confidence dripping from every move. I watched from the kitchen window, sipping my tea. She didn't knock, just walked in with a clipboard and a look of faux sympathy plastered on her face. "Hi, Evelyn," she said, glancing around the living room. "I figured I'd stop by and see how packing was going." I set my teacup down gently. "I haven't packed," I said. She blinked. "You haven't?" "No." "Well," she smiled, like someone explaining a bill to a confused customer. "I thought we agreed." "We didn't agree on anything," I interrupted, calm. "Director." She stood there, clipboard against her chest like a shield. "Look," she said, "I'm trying to make this smooth for you, but I am selling this house. It's what Jacob would have wanted." I turned and picked up a white envelope from the table. "Jacob actually wanted me to have the house," I said softly. "And legally, he made sure I would." I handed her the envelope. She opened it slowly, expecting something sentimental, maybe a letter. What she got was a formal statement of ownership from the county registrar's office. Signed, stamped, final, Evelyn Grace. Thomas, sole property owner. Her expression shifted. Confidence drained from her face. She reread it twice, then looked up at me with stunned silence. "That's not possible," she whispered. "It's not just possible," I replied. "It's done." She laughed once, a sharp, nervous sound. "You think you can just, what, kick me out of the process? You're not being reasonable. I'm his widow. You're also not on the deed." Her mouth opened, then closed. I could see the storm building behind her eyes. "This house was never yours to take, Kelsey. You knew that, but you counted on me being too broken to stop you. You're doing this out of spite," she said, voice rising. "You've never liked me." I stayed quiet. She took a step forward, jabbing her finger toward the documents. "I can contest this. I have rights." "No, you don't," I replied. "Not to this house. Not to what Jacob left me." She stared at me for a long time, maybe waiting for me to back down, maybe hoping I'd crumble, cry, beg her to forgive me. Instead, I walked to the front door, opened it, looked her in the eyes. "You should go." She didn't move. "I won't say it again," I said. For a moment, we stood there. Two women, both grieving, but only one of us willing to let go with grace. She turned, stepped outside, said nothing. I closed the door behind her and locked it. Not just physically, symbolically. That chapter of my life, of being controlled, manipulated, underestimated, it ended with the turn of that key. I walked back into the kitchen, picked up my tea. It was cold now, but I drank it anyway, because I had won. Not with shouting, not with threats, with truth and the quiet, steady power of someone who refuses to be erased. I expected her to try something, I've lived long enough to know that people like Kelsey don't go quiet. And sure enough, it took less than 48 hours. The emails started first. I just need to come by and grab a few things Jacob left here. You're creating a hostile environment. Legally, I may have a claim to this property under marital equity laws. I forwarded each one to Mr. Eldridge. He read them all, then replied with a single sentence. She has no standing. Do not engage. Then came the calls from mutual friends. Awkward. Hesitant. Hey, Evelyn. Kelsey mentioned you kicked her out of Jacob's house? Jacob's house. That phrase felt like a dagger. I smiled through the phone. I simply reminded her what Jacob legally left behind and who he left it to. There were whispers, of course. She made sure of that. Claimed I was unstable, that I manipulated Jacob in his final years, that I tricked him into signing the deed with some kind of guilt trip. It didn't work. People may not have always liked me for being quiet, but they respected me. And when the truth surfaced, that she had tried to evict me during her own husband's funeral, the court of public opinion turned colder than any legal notice ever could. Then came her final, desperate move. A letter, delivered by courier, handwritten, 3 pages. In it, Kelsey claimed she was pregnant, said the stress was too much, that she was overwhelmed, that she and Jacob had always planned to start a family in the farmhouse, and that maybe, just maybe, if I really loved Jacob, I'd step aside and do the right thing. I stared at the letter for a long time. Pregnant? After 7 years of marriage? When Jacob had told me just a year ago that they had quietly agreed not to have children? I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the letter to Mr. Eldridge. He called me the next morning. Evelyn, I don't believe there's any legal weight to this. She's attempting emotional leverage. And I also ran a background inquiry on a whim. She's listed a different mailing address, a condo, under a man's name. Recently leased. He paused. She's already moved on. That moment hurt more than I expected, because despite everything, a small part of me had wanted to believe she was grieving too. But she wasn't mourning Jacob. She was maneuvering, and she lost. A week later, I saw her for the last time. She came by to pick up some boxes Jacob had stored in the garage. I let her. I stayed on the porch with a glass of sweet tea and watched her silently carry out the last pieces of her story from my house. She didn't say a word, neither did I. When she was done, she shut her trunk a little too hard, like she was hoping it would scare me. But it didn't. I didn't flinch. She climbed into her car, stared at me for a second, then drove away without looking back. I sat there long after she was gone, listening to the wind rustle the leaves of the oak tree, Jacob's tree, my home, our peace. A year has passed. The seasons rolled by like waves. Spring into summer, then fall, now spring again. Time didn't stop, even when my heart did, even when it felt like the world had shattered. But little by little, piece by piece, I rebuilt something inside myself. The house is quiet now, but not hollow, just peaceful. I wake up every morning and open the curtains in Jacob's old bedroom. The sun pours through the glass and onto the oak floor where he once played with toy cars and read books beneath a blanket fort. I kept some of his things. I boxed up others and donated them to a local shelter for at-risk teens. In his name, I even started a small memorial scholarship at the school where he taught. Each year, it helps one new teacher pay off part of their certification. I called it the Jacob Thomas First Light Fund, because he always believed teachers were the first light in a child's life. It's small, but it's something. It's purpose. And in this new life, that's enough. As for Kelsey, she never contacted me again after that final drive away. I heard, through someone at the market, that she sold her condo and moved to Charlotte, started working at a high-end real estate firm. She's posting again, always smiling, always filtered. I hold no hatred toward her. Truly, I don't. But I will never forget what she did, or who I became because of it. I found my strength again, not in anger, but in stillness, not in revenge, but in truth. Jacob once told me, "You don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be the strongest." I think he knew, even then, the kind of woman I'd need to be. I started volunteering at the library again. I teach a reading group for women over 60. We meet every Thursday, drink lukewarm coffee, and argue passionately about novels. It's the kind of joy that doesn't shout, but settles in your bones like a warm fire. Last week, I planted wildflowers around the oak tree, the same tree Daniel planted when Jacob was born. Its roots are so deep now that nothing could ever move it. That tree is my symbol, strong, grounded, quietly powerful, and just like that tree, I stayed, I endured, I outlived the storm. And now, I thrive, not because I fought to win, but because I refused to leave what was mine. She gave me a week to get out, but I gave myself a lifetime to heal, right here, where I belong.